This is Bangkok's Chinatown, and like Chinatowns everywhere, it triggers some almost magical image of someplace distant and mysterious. This is the China of our imaginations. The red lanterns and unfamiliar delicacies in alleys that look like they came right off the set of a Bruce Lee movie or a historical epic. Here, during the Lunar New Year, is one of the great spectacles anywhere in Asia. Hundreds of thousands descend on this district during China's national holiday to revel in dragon dances and live entertainment, to wear qipaos and tang suits, to eat street food and savor the atmosphere. It's amazing, right in the heart of Thailand, that there's a neighborhood that feels completely authentic to China. So real, as though it were part of Zhengzhou or Nanchang. But I'm not talking about Chinatown. I'm talking about a place a few miles to the north, one you've probably never heard of before. This is the place where the actual Chinese immigrants go when they arrive in Bangkok. Here you might not find tourists or dancing dragons, but you will find a place where Mandarin is the primary language and WeChat is the mode of communication. A place where you can smell the baijiu and the smoke from the furongwangs, where you'll find real Chinese cooks making real Chinese dishes, and where, if you look hard enough, you might even see the future of modern cuisine. This is Huay Khwang, and it's not Chinatown, it's China, right here in Bangkok.
In New York, if you want a broader taste of Chinese food, you go to Flushing.
In Bangkok?
In Bangkok, you come here.
This is admittedly not the most photogenic meal we've ever had on this channel. But I lived in China for almost 12 years, and for all that time, this stuff was so ubiquitous that I never considered I might one day almost forget about it. This is called Malatang. It's originally from Sichuan province, but by now it's spread across China. There are different forms of malatang, but basically at its core, it's cheap stuff cooked in a spicy broth, then seasoned with even more spice. This is not fancy stuff. This is what high schoolers eat on their allowance money, or what workers take away from convenience stores for something cheap and fast.
我告诉你，这真的是第一次，我在这边我吃一个东西是比中国100%一样的，100%。
对，我们就是还原了四川的味道，然后完全没有改良。因为其实辉煌周边的一些火锅，他们是会根据当地人的口味，减少辣度和改良味道的。我们是完全没有，就是非常地道。
It's lunchtime in Huay Khwang, and along with dusting off my painfully rusty Chinese, I'm also properly food crawling through a decade of memories. This isn't the stuff of special occasions, banquet dinners and imperial feasts and the very best regional delicacies. But if anything, it's something that triggers an even deeper emotional reaction. It's the everyday fast food, the stuff I used to take for granted. Like this. Chongqing xiaomian, or spicy noodles. There was a Chongqing noodle shop right behind my old apartment in Beijing, and every time I'd come back to town from anywhere, I'd always stop in and grab some to go, then bring it home, crack a beer, and sink into the couch. It's been 15 months since I've had a bowl of this stuff, packed with delightful things like Sichuan pepper and MSG. It tastes like home. All throughout Pracha Ratbampen Street in the heart of Huay Khwang, what you see looks pretty much like a typical neighborhood in any Chinese city. There are housing rental shops and traditional medicine clinics, supermarkets and guys fixing anything. And everyone here speaks Mandarin. I stopped at a Luckin coffee shop, the Chinese Starbucks as it's called, and I actually had to translate for a guy in line because the barista didn't speak any Thai or English. Hell, there's even a Lanzhou la mian. Hand-pulled noodles, ubiquitous in China, where there are more than 100,000 of these places. Derived from the Hui Muslims in China's northwest, but so uncommon outside the country that seeing one here, I had to do a double take. And it was pretty much spot on. The aromatic broth and the doughy noodles served with crushed chili oil and vinegar. It's hard to give any of this stuff the proper perspective. Like, this is weird to find a neighborhood abroad that triggers so many memories. Not the big famous stuff that screams China, but the tiniest details, down to the vendors on the streets pushing carts to sharpen knives or collect recycling. For a moment, I actually forgot I was in Thailand, which begs the question, how did this all happen, and why is it here? To understand Huay Khwang and how it came to exist, we have to go back to the other Chinatown, the famous one. The very short version of the story is that Yarowat is actually as old as modern Bangkok itself, dating back to the 1760s. It sits on land granted by the first modern Siamese emperor who wanted to encourage immigration from his father's ancestral home, Chaozhou in southern China, to facilitate trade between the empires. As Bangkok grew, so did Yarowat, and by the middle of the 1800s, this was at its peak. A true ethnic enclave that must have been quite a sight to see. Now here's the thing about immigrant communities. They never really last very long before they change into something else. In the beginning, these places are vital. It's hard navigating a new country, a new culture, a new language. Immigrants tend to stick together to support each other with help and advice. Things like how to find a job and how not to get scammed and how to buy drinking water and stuff like that. Anyway, as time goes by and workers bring their families and young people grow up and start their own families, eventually, the neighborhood is full of people who were born there, and there's still a cultural connection to back home, but not much more than that. And by that point, when a new wave of migrants arrive, they start a new cluster somewhere else, and the cycle begins again. What I'm pretty much saying is that by the middle of the 19th century, Bangkok's Chinatown was already past its peak as an immigrant hub. Even for migrants from the same part of southern China, Talad Noi came next, then Saturn, and finally, starting in the late 1980s, Huay Khwang, built on cheap land just north of the Chinese embassy. But let's go back to those old neighborhoods. They didn't just vanish, they absorbed. And that includes the food, too. Yarowat was settled in the 1800s by immigrants from Chaozhou, and among the dishes that were once confined to that neighborhood were more than a few regional delicacies that have by now become absorbed completely into everyday Thai cuisine. Like hoi tod, or seafood omelet, made with oysters in Chaozhou, the more common mussels here in Thailand. And this ubiquitous Bangkok breakfast food, pork noodle soup, adapted from a similar dish that first came to Thailand in the days of Yarowat. And that's not all. There's gui jub, and khao tom, and kanam gui chai tod, deep-fried chive cake, and more that I'm probably not even thinking of because by now the cuisine in Chaozhou has evolved and the food it influenced in Thailand has evolved, and if we're gonna go down that track, then I need to bring in an expert. Steph, walking around leading a tour with the microphone and the lavalier setup, is the wireless microphone, is very familiar. It's like this is such a, you go to any Chinese tourist city, the only difference is you'd also have a speaker.
Yeah, and then like, everybody this way, this way.
Except what it would actually sound like would be like, everybody this way. Sorry, Jasper, if that wasn't you. This is Steph from Chinese Cooking Demystified. She's one of the world's top authorities on authentic Chinese food, and along with her husband Chris, they filmed their popular YouTube channel not far from Huay Khwang. I asked her to join me to help me understand the food of this neighborhood.
So this is a Fujian noodle soup and xianfang shop. That's also pretty decent. Oh, can you smell the 螺蛳粉?
That's, I think the exhaust fan is right there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
In June of last year, Chris and Steph moved from southern China to Bangkok. They'd been interested for a long time in researching the food of the Chinese diaspora, and there were personal reasons for the move, but what really made it viable was when Steph stumbled onto an online community on Chinese social media helping migrants in Bangkok find anything from housing all the way down to specific ingredients. As it turns out, Huay Khwang's Little China might be completely unknown here in Bangkok, but inside China, everyone coming to Thailand knows about this place.
Many newcomers, they already heard this place, Huay Khwang. If they're coming to live in Bangkok, this will probably be the earlier, first area that you come look. I know already just off randomly online, 2 Chinese-speaking housing agents. One is over just at that building, and one is just on that street, really randomly, just talking on WeChat. And then I know about that. So I can only imagine for someone that doesn't speak Thai or English coming here, this would just be the place to at least begin, I'll say.
The biggest difference between the authentic Chinese cuisine of Huay Khwang and that of any of the other immigrant neighborhoods that came before is that this is the first one settled after the beginning of China's economic boom. What that basically means is in every Chinatown older than this, here or overseas, you'll usually find most of the people and the food come from one province or even one city. Like Yarowat was Chaoshan and Talad Plu was a Hokkien settlement. But here, this stuff comes from everywhere. Not only did the last 4 decades see 500 million people move to China's coastal cities, but for the first time, dishes started to spread, and what you'll see in China now, no matter where you are, and that actually includes Huay Khwang, runs the gamut of dishes pulled from every corner of the country. Here's the interesting thing though. The food from Chaozhou became part of Thai cuisine through the Chinatown at Yarowat. Same with things like mee krob and patongo from the Hokkien people at Talad Plu. We should pay attention to this stuff, because one day, it might become adapted here too.
In America, New York-style pizza, Chicago-style pizza, most people know what this stuff is. Detroit-style pizza didn't really expand. And there's no reason for that other than just some things get lucky, some things don't, right? China, what dishes that in the days when Yarowat was built were just regional dishes have gone national?
So what spread from regional to national?
What would you expect that in any third-tier city in any part of China you could find? You're gonna find a Lanzhou Lamian.
Yeah, Lanzhou Lamian, 沙县 again.
You're gonna find a
螺蛳粉.
小吃.
螺蛳粉 because it's been a phenomenon in the past 5 years. So 螺蛳粉 is this noodle soup, rice noodle soup from Lanzhou in Guangxi province, which they use fresh river snail and fermented sour bamboo shoot to make their soup base. And people say that it's stinky, but it's actually just kind of like that strong flavor coming out from the fermented sour bamboo shoot. It's actually not like stinky, it's just pungent, has a strong flavor. And that thing became widely popular in China in the past, I would say 5 years at least.
What else?
Well, there's the lack of this huangmenji mi fan, the yellow braised chicken rice here. Malatang,
Bubble tea.
hot pot, bubble tea, 烧烤, some kind of like 水煮鱼.
So basically Sichuan food.
Yeah, lots of Sichuan food is like really becoming like a national thing.
You know, sometimes I'm in the mood for like a really good steak, but there are some days when I just want
A normal steak.
a normal steak.
I know.
And if you ever just want a normal steak, There it is.
It looks completely normal and fine.
There's no question that this neighborhood, at least as it exists today, is time limited. But it's not always possible to predict what comes next after an immigrant neighborhood becomes obsolete. Sometimes, like with Yarowat or nearby Little India, which dates to the 1930s, the place survives almost intact, even with the language and culture and cuisine more or less absorbed into the surroundings. Chinese and Indian become Thai Chinese and Thai Indian, but the businesses and restaurants pass down from generation to generation and remain as kind of a time capsule. But elsewhere, in other ethnic enclaves, as immigrants eventually integrate and climb the economic ladder, they choose simply to leave for nicer parts of town, and the old tenements and dormitories end up home to a new wave of arrivals from somewhere else. There are countless examples of that everywhere here. Just in the last few weeks on this channel, we've covered Nang Luang, which was a Khmer settlement that became a Vietnamese and then a Hokkien Chinese neighborhood before assimilating and absorbing into Thailand, and Pratunam, the home of the Burmese and West African community today, but at various points the domain of Arabic, Nepalese, and various Southeast Asian clusters, all within the span of just a few decades. It's impossible to know for sure what will come next here in Huay Khwang once the first generation of immigrants starts to age out and their kids, born and raised in Thailand, don't need this community anymore. If the past is any indication, we're pretty close to that point already. But if you pay really close attention, there are signs of what the future holds here. And if we're right, it could be something truly incredible. See, it's not just people in China who speak Chinese. The northern highlands of Thailand and Myanmar are packed with hill tribes that share ethnic and linguistic bonds with people right across the border in China's Yunnan province. In the past, when these Chinese-speaking minorities would come to Bangkok, they'd typically be forced into working-class jobs at the lowest end of the social ladder. But here, as the Chinese community that started arriving in the 1980s gets older, it's not just new immigrants coming in to fill the void. It's huge numbers of Chinese-speaking people from marginalized ethnic groups, and while many of them work here in the service industry, there's now enough of them to form their own mini communities. Like the family that owns this place. They belong to the Hwa ethnic group, which has about 1 million people in total across the rural mountains of Thailand, Myanmar, and Yunnan. This group was so notorious as warriors and headhunters 200 years ago that the British referred to them as the Wild Hwa. I've never had Hwa food before, or at least I hadn't until Chris and Steph brought me here a few months ago. That's why it's helpful to have friends who know so much about so much. Most of the menu here is generic Chinese, but if you call ahead, you can reserve this, which is just one of the most absurdly awesome feasts I've ever eaten, and I'm so excited to be back here. All right, so I'm really desperate to start eating, so we're gonna be quick. But what is this restaurant? Tell me where we are.
Okay, so we are at a Yunnan restaurant, and the owner is like Huazhu people. So it's like, this is a Hwa style shou jia fan, like hand grab rice platter. And this is usually kind of like a celebratory kind of thing. We first came here for my birthday, and then since then we loved it. So here, let's go through what it is. So usually you will have 2 dips. This is their house-made dip that's like based with tomato and chili, super spicy, very good. This is the fish wort, yu xin cao, jargon. Something that not many people can, handle, but got a pretty interesting fragrance to it. And this is their house-made sausage that's like shipped from northern Thailand, which has like a very nice fermented flavor that I really love. And this is some mix of deep fried pork belly and ribs. That's also really good. You usually kind of eat it with like sticky rice or rice. And then here we have the mu gua chicken, which is like a silken chicken that's kind of cooked with the kind of sour Dulcinea fruit. That's kind of a specialty in Yunnan. This is a bao shao, like meat with herb cooked and wrapped in banana leaf. It's stir-fry banana blossom. This is the kind of their special choice, some that's from the north, and they kind of cook it with some kind of stock, and now top it with crispy deep-fried peanut and garlic. And then this, it's like the most addictive rice killer, which is like deep-fried fermented soybean fried with crispy garlic. It's chocolatey, earthy, savory. And then this is the pumpkin sprout. That's also cooked with stock, so it's also very flavorful. And vegetables and eggs for you to dip in the dips or clean your palate. Yeah, that's basically what it is. Oh, just in time.
All right, I think it's time to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Should we get the guys in here?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. This is probably more than just you and I cannot make much of a dent out of this. We'll flag them. I'll grab the guys from outside. Jasper, I'll set another timer for 5 minutes to film us eat. Then you get to eat too. Okay. So this is something that everybody should get to enjoy. Guys, if you want to come eat. It is 10:45 at night in Shenzhen, China. This is Chris, by the way. Cheers. Chris is enjoying a Chinese hamburger.
Terrible translation.
I wish smells could translate to videotape.
There's a lot of different smells going.
I think you and I have a future in broadcasting together.
You think so?
Commentary like this.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful, right?
Over here we have a baby dressed as a panda. No, it's a stuffed animal.
It's a stuffed animal. Yeah. Spot on.
Spot on. Okay, nailed that one. We have a Beijing duck burrito guy coming up on the left. This is my weakness. Oh, here it is. This is the Beijing duck guy. If I'm going to tell a story about immigrant communities, I need to at least take one moment to talk about my own. The one I found when I first moved overseas all those years ago. The first place I lived abroad was Shenzhen, China, and in the beginning, I couldn't even get on a subway without help. Slowly, I learned to navigate my new life thanks to a very small community of expatriates, mostly Americans who'd clustered around a village on the Hong Kong-Shenzhen border called Huay. Now, when I say it was a small expat community in Huay, I mean like a dozen people, of whom I'm still in touch with pretty much all of them. But I came to China for food, to cook and to learn, and that's how, more than with anyone else, I connected with Chris. Back then, whenever we weren't at work, Chris and I would be off exploring every corner of South China looking for the best food and the most incredible stuff. And then at night, we'd come back to Huay, where there weren't any bars, but there was a baijiu shop, that Chinese sorghum liquor, and we'd get some xiaokao or skewers of barbecue and sit at a table and drink baijiu with the owner of the shop until every night, around 10:30, his wife would yell at him for drinking again and we'd have to go home. Now that was a long time ago. And since then, our lives have changed and Shenzhen has dramatically changed, but still, more than anything, that was my China. The place I want to remember, and the thing that gets triggered when I come back to somewhere like this. There's a lot of things that might happen in the next decade here in Huay Khwang. Maybe it'll eventually become the domain of ethnic minorities like the Wa people, the Miao and the Jingpo and the Lisu. What an incredible place that would be to explore. Maybe the Chinese will move out and a new immigrant group will move in from somewhere else in some far corner of the world. Or maybe the people themselves will integrate into life in Thailand, but they'll keep their own traditions from their generation. Because I guess that's ultimately the reason why places like Yarowat and Paharat didn't go away even when they weren't, quote, needed anymore. They still were needed in a different way, for the stuff that to one specific generation from one specific place might mean more than we can put into words. For me, it's barbecue and xiaokao with Chris. For Steph, it's bowls of luosifen and Guizhou street snacks. For Daria, it's dongbei dumplings. For everyone here, it's something. It's more than nostalgia. It's home. And that is the story of Huay Khwang. Subscribe to the channel for more from OTR. Thank you so much to everybody who's supporting us on Patreon, and please check the links below for our website and social media.